Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second session in our five-part series, Let's Talk, Closing the Racial Gap in STEM, and today we focus on elementary school. I'm Martha McCabe, Executive Director of the Kansas City STEM Alliance, and on behalf of our advisory board, funders, the STEM Connect KC ecosystem leadership team, we thank you for joining us today for an enlightening and real conversation. Our team at the KC STEM Alliance has been on a journey involving executive leadership training and staff development to better understand systemic racism, implicit bias that creates education and economic inequities impacting the students and families right here in Kansas City. And to understand what our role can be to support those doing this work and to become even stronger partners and allies. This series represents our efforts in creating a bigger and deeper commitment to this work. And we consider this series Design Thinking in Action as we listen to our panelists. This morning, I had the pleasure of hearing this year's Kansas City Tech Spec report from the KC Tech Council. Check it out at kctechspecs.com. They shared that this past year, Kansas City was third in the country behind San Francisco and Austin in percentage growth in tech sector jobs. And we know for those companies that have these jobs, the more diverse their workforce is, the more profitable those companies will be. So we have a local imperative, economic imperative to build an equitable tech workforce, as well as to engage and excite all students in the possibilities that tech brings them and potentially for their individual economic prosperity. So an individual economic imperative and a local economic imperative. Luckily, here at the KC STEM Alliance, we have our own IT professional who has been doing this work for a long time. She's helping us to work alongside and excite students and engaging all partners at the KC STEM Alliance, and that is our own team member, Chrissy Chandler. Chrissy is a teacher, a computer science and IT professional, and serves as the program delivery partner for First Lego League. Her passion for education and inspiring young people to explore and engage in STEM has been an incredible gift to our work, and we look forward to her leadership as the STEM Alliance embraces even more initiatives to ensure that all young people have the opportunity to explore the world of STEM. So I'm delighted to introduce to you Christina Chandler.
Thank you so much, Martha, for the introduction. I'm so excited to take the lead in this work. The KC STEM Alliance's work has always been done through a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But now we are ready to take that work to the next level, making sure that all students have access to rich and rigorous STEM opportunities. And this has always been a passion of mine. So now through my work with the KC STEM Alliance, I have the opportunity to turn that passion into action. The KC STEM Alliance is going to continue to build upon the work that is already done to ensure that equitable strategies are in place and that all students are prepared for our future STEM workforce opportunities. And as Martha said, those opportunities are continuing to grow here in the Kansas City region. So all this work is all the more so important. So I thank you all so much, and I look forward to engaging with you on this journey. And now it is my privilege to introduce Andrea Ellis. She is the Director of Strategic Learning for the Kansas City Public Library System, and she will moderate this series. Her work and advocacy around making sure that all students have access to diverse learning opportunities is helping to move the needle forward for students in our region. Thank you, Andrea, for all your work, and I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Chrissy. As mentioned, I am Andrea Ellis, the Director of Strategic Learning at the Kansas City Public Library and also a KC STEM Alliance board member. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. This is the second of 5 conversations that will be hosted every Wednesday until June 16th from 11:30 to 12:30 p.m. The focus of this series is to name and acknowledge the barriers to success in STEM for individuals of color and to recognize and honor where there have been both systemic and personal successes in addressing those barriers. So general housekeeping first, both the chat and the Q&A are active. If you have questions for the panelists, please use the Q&A. That's just going to be a better way for our team to keep track of all those questions. The chat can be seen by all the panelists, so please feel free to share comments there. And also, if you have any resources that you think would be useful to all of the registrants for this series, please share that as well, because we're going to keep track of it. And then at the end of the series, we will share those back out with everyone who has registered. Last note is there will be a Q&A after we formally adjourn this meeting. So we wanted to keep that 11:30 to 12:30 time tight for those who can just do this on a lunch break. But we also know that we may not get to all of the questions that you have. So if our panelists are willing, we're going to have an additional just 10 minutes at the end to try to get all of the rest of those questions in. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce Ann Zimmerman, who is the graphic recorder for this series. And Ann is going to give us a little recap of what happened in our first session last week. Welcome, Ann.
Hi, Andrea, and hello, everybody. Yes, I've been delighted to be able to graphically record what's happening during these sessions. And so I'm going to ask Terry to share the picture from last week. We thought we would change this up a bit. And so at the beginning of each session, we'll do a little recap of what happened the week before. So what you're seeing is just an illustration of some of the core concepts that came out of the conversation. We started, and as you'll notice, we have these huge mountains in the background. And those represent that these are big issues. These are not going to be things we can solve overnight. So we may need to do some climbing to get to them, but we know we can get there. So we started off last week with Natalie Lewis, education warrior, who really challenged us to think about what is the problem. And we talk a lot in STEM about this leaky pipeline and that STEM workforce gap. But the reality is, I think she was challenging us to think about what is the true problem there? Is it a leaky pipeline, or did we never build that pipeline to begin with to accommodate people of color? So this problem, is it the fish or is it the lake? Is there something wrong or a bigger systemic issue? And so that is really why we are having these courageous conversations around equity, around racism, barriers to entry for any number of people. And it really is this much larger issue. I mean, we are looking at it from a STEM perspective, but it's happening and it's pervasive in all of our society. So how do we lean into that discomfort a little bit as we're having these conversations and open our hearts to really have the best intentions at heart and really try to dismantle those walls so that when a young person finds a skill and a passion, that they can follow that into the opportunity. That set the stage for a fantastic panel with Dr. Williams, Raz Concepcion, and Grant Lewis, who really dove in and said, hey, there are some real things that we can do to make a difference, starting robotics clubs, giving young people a place to belong, a sense of belonging in STEM, and having role models and mentors that they can look up to that look like them. I think there was a lot of conversation about where we can find those role models. How can we make sure that a young person can see a person of color and aspire into those roles? And so just a lot of work around building awareness and helping young people realize that this might be their passion, and it might also just give them the economic freedom to pursue other passions in life. And that we need to find a way to have equitable access to the resources, the opportunities that are going to help them succeed all along. So not just now in elementary as we talk today, but what comes next at every step of the way. So today I'll be drawing in the background, and we'll share this next week to see some of the strategies that can happen in the elementary space.
I just want to add one thing to that, is the gatekeepers. So you might have seen on the drawing that Ian had, there was something about gatekeepers, and that came up in the last conversation. And I imagine it will continue to be an integral part of this series, is who is putting up the walls that prevents some folks to have access to these opportunities, and how can we help them see a better way to help the students of color see a pathway into this world. So I think that's a pretty huge barrier. And I think it's one that, since it's adults, since it's people who are doing it, that we can address. So, we can make those changes. So just wanted to point that out. But thank you, Ann, so much. It looked wonderful. And I look forward to seeing the one for next week.
Awesome.
All right. So today's discussion is focused on the elementary school experience. And the interesting thing about this particular age group is that they are still at a stage where curiosity and experimentation come naturally. You know, that process of questioning that is integral to STEM is how they are experiencing the world. It's also very possible that if they catch the bug at this young age, it can create skill sets needed for lifelong learning. On today's panel, we have a principal, a teacher, a student, and an informal educator and tech professional. They will introduce themselves after the keynote. Bios should have been sent to you all in advance, so I hope you have those. But now let me introduce you to our keynote today. Derek Pruitt teaches STEM courses at Center Middle School and coaches 2 robotics teams. Previously, he was an elementary school teacher that coached 8 First Lego League robotics teams at Center Elementary. Derek, take it away.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for the gracious welcome. It's definitely an honor and a privilege to be able to spend this time with you guys. So let's get it started. I would like to start this conversation off a little different than last week. Last week was very informal and awesome, and there's just no way I can top that or reach it. So I would like to see the world through rose-colored glasses. What if the world was perfect? What if there was no gaps or inequalities in STEM? What would be the problem for African Americans still in STEM? I know you're probably thinking, you just said the world is perfect, yet how can we have problems or concern in STEMs for African Americans? I've had the pleasure, as Andrea said, for being an elementary teacher in the urban core for 24 years, and a robotics coach for the last 8 years with those same students. I was introduced to robotics by Ms. Chandler about 10 years ago. I attended a robotics championship event as a chaperone, and I noticed that out of 20 plus teams that was there, my students, the urban core, was not adequately presented or represented at all. I told myself that my kids needed to be a part of this type of event or world. Something like this could change their life, their future, their neighborhoods, and even their communities. And so I began my work with convincing my students to try something new, something that did not involve a ball, music, dancing, or cleaning up for a living. Along the way, my wife and I pushed for STEM to be taught throughout our elementary school on our district half day. We paired grade levels up every month where there was a new STEM activity for the kids to work through. However, there were many problems or concerns with STEM for this group of students that I noticed. For example, the lack of knowledge by teachers to teach STEM, the lack of information about the benefits of getting a job in STEM, the lack of high expectation from teachers for Black students, the inability in allowing students to fail forward. Also, there was a lack of financial support by the school or the district compared to financial support for sports receiving in that same district. And finally, the lack of parental knowledge or support for STEM programs or even careers for their students. I learned that we have taught our kids to be materialistic, and therefore kids do not see the benefits of STEM as an option as a career. They see and hear the kind of money an athlete or entertainer can make, and this gets them to dreaming of having a career in those fields. I already know what you're saying. Not every kid will make it to the pros or in the entertainment, and I truly believe that too. However, you have a slimmer chance of winning the lottery, and yet millions of people still play it every single day. And look, I said all that to just simply say this. How do we get urban school parents to see the value in STEM-related jobs so that they can be the ones to encourage their students to get into those school programs? And how do we get urban schools to invest into more STEM classes? The poet Sheryl Sandberg simply says this: we cannot change what we are not aware of. And once we are aware, we cannot help but change. It is all about expectations. A belief that someone will or should achieve something. Expectations and desires are such a beautiful and yet dangerous part of life. How do we maintain joy when we have unmet expectations? Finally, I'm gonna finish it with this. The Bible says this in Proverbs 13 and 12. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a desire fulfilled is a tree of life. Let's go. Thank you.
Derek, thank you so much. You gave us a lot to think about there. I appreciate you taking the time and really throwing down the gauntlet. So thank you. So if all of the panelists would love to, I don't know if you would love to, but I would love it if you would turn on your cameras now. That would be fantastic. And we're going to have all of you kind of introduce yourselves. Still waiting for a couple more. There we go. All right. So I'll just kind of call on you and ask if you just take a few seconds just to tell us where you're located and kind of what you think is the main thing in STEM that we need to be talking about today. So I will start with Brandon.
Hi, my name is Brandon Chandler. I go to Center High School. I'm a junior, and I've been in robotics since 3rd grade, I believe, and I'm still in FRC today.
Thanks, Brandon. All right, Kenise.
Hi, my name is Kenise Salinas, and I'm currently the principal at New Chelsea Elementary in Kansas City, Kansas. And I believe that STEM can equal the playing field in education, but it starts with leadership vision.
Fantastic. All right, and Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Buckner. I am the CEO and co-founder of We Code KC, which is a program that teaches, exposes Urban Core students to technology and cybersecurity. I believe tapping into the fearlessness of our education system, or excuse me, our elementary students and our young adults and going into high school is so important. Thank you, Derek, for everything that you said, but I'm so excited for this opportunity. But yeah, just tapping into those fearlessness of those elementary students is so important right now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all and welcome. And so I just will say too, that if at any point, any of you have questions for each other, feel free to jump in, take your mic off, and let's really have a discussion. It doesn't have to just be me here throwing out questions, but I will start to get it rolling. And I would love to start with Brandon again, if you don't mind kind of sharing with folks here, how did you get involved in robotics? What made you interested in it? And kind of where are you now with it?
So at first, I started robotics in 3rd grade because my friends were doing it, and I just really liked Legos in the first place. So I was part of the team for I think until middle school for FLL, and then now I'm in FRC. And I'm the lead driver. And I still plan on finishing that until I graduate.
Fantastic. And you said you had friends and you liked Legos. And I imagine, did mom have some input in that as well? In you getting involved in robotics?
Maybe a little bit, but I still think it was definitely my choice because I really did enjoy doing it.
Okay, fantastic. And also, if you don't mind, you shared with me that what was your role with that FLL team and why were you interested in that particular role?
So even though I still like to play with Legos, I didn't actually have too much to do with the robot, but what I did mostly was the project type stuff. So that was like researching our solution, finding everything about it, determining like costs and how it would be used real world. And I really like doing that.
And how did that tie into what you're planning to do when you graduate from high school?
So I'm planning on becoming a medical researcher. And I think one of my favorite things was researching about our project and finding out and learning new things. So that probably is why I'm on the path I'm headed today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brandon. That was wonderful. And now I'm going to kick it over to Kenise, who maybe you could share with us as a principal of an elementary school, what are the things that you have felt have been most important about bringing STEM into your school, and even a little bit about where there may have been struggles or barriers to do so?
Absolutely. I think it's exposure. I think it's rethinking what fun and education look like. I think it's about what is a new normal in education. Every year, I would bring STEM to summer classrooms because kids, they want to have fun, and STEM is fun, but it's actually harder than what we are doing currently in the classroom because there's analysis, there is problem solving, there's higher level vocabulary. And so I was able to expose teachers and kids to STEM in summer through investigations, through CSI, crime scene type things that they want to know more about. The barrier is that exactly what Mr. Pruitt said, that leadership and people above don't really understand what STEM or STEAM truly is and how it affects the brain, how it affects students' ability to explore more and to want more. And so they're afraid of it because I don't believe that they have been exposed to it or were exposed to it in their own education. And so we only want to replicate what we know and what we feel comfortable with. But we are in the 21st century learning, and we got to know what kids want to know and what kids find is exciting for them. And so I believe in building a new normal. I believe in building leadership vision because it starts at the top. The kids can't get it if people, there's not enough Derek Pruitts out there. And it's not, and the thing is, teachers, admin, district level people have to see the vision and they have to be exposed. And I think when they get a sense of what it looks like, the excitement, the success, then we can move in a direction of success for all kids. But I would have to say, if I would use one word, it would be exposure.
And could you, before we go to Tammy, can you also maybe share with everyone, you had talked with me about how you helped your teachers get excited about this?
Absolutely. So I get so excited. I told Andrea, I got to I'm calming myself down right now because I love STEM and I love STEAM. And actually, Derek, I'll have to talk to you. I was in charge of the robotics team in Independence when I was a principal there. But I just love everything about it. What it is though, my energy to the teachers. I have to have energy. I have to have excitement. And I also have to be on the cusp of what's out there that's new and exciting. And so I was telling Miss Ellis that just as simple things, and I'm sure Brandon knows a little bit about this, but like the merge cube, and I'm not here to promote any kind of any person, but when you put different types of educational resources in a teacher's hand and show them how excited they can be as adults, then the kids can only get 10 times more excited from their excitement. And so what I try to do is, one, I want to know what excites teachers. And if a teacher tells me, well, Kenise, I really love STEM that has to do with cooking. Well, excellent. Well, tell me what you want to know, or tell me what would make you excited to then make kids excited. And so you have to tap into your teachers. You have to tap into what they do well. You have to tap into what excites them. And then it's the trickle down effect. But first, you have to give them the latitude to be free and to know that education looks differently. It looks different nowadays, and give them the latitude to be themselves and to explore with structure, because I'm all about the structure. But I want them to know that it doesn't look like even education 5 years ago, 3 years ago. It is a new world with new kids who want more. And it's not about money either. I can find you the free merge cube made out of paper. And so, but I have to be willing to be the learner and then to teach. And it just continues to trickle down from there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. And then I wanted to bring Tammy in because, you know, I was reading a report recently that talked about the fact that kids have like 6,000 waking hours in a year, and 1,000 of those are spent in the school, which means there's a lot of hours not spent in the school day. And so this is where some of the informal educators can come in and be partners in this process. And so Tammy, if you could talk a little bit about what you do and why you think this is important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes. Again, my name is Tammy Buckner. I'm the CEO and co-founder of WeCode KC, which is a program where we offer exposure of technology, cybersecurity, as well as now we're partnering with different people that robotics on the weekends, as well as through the week, because we found that a lot of students are looking for after school programs. We normally host classes on the first and third Saturdays of the month. Again, we're starting to do a few more classes through the weeks because kids are asking for our program. And it's exciting because, as you said, Andrea, there are a lot of hours that they're outside of school. Some of these kids get bored and may not be in sports. They may not be in band. What else is there for them to do? So technology is a path that they can not only learn about, but also utilize that as a career path. So that's where we are that conduit to share this exposure to our students.
Fantastic. And so tell me maybe a few barriers that you have run into as you've tried to do this work.
Yeah, some of the barriers are pretty much almost the same as, you know, the school districts. What I love about, you know, a lot of the kids are either drugged to some of these programs by their parents, but it's exciting to see Brandon and other students that are interested, and they come to us and they're asking for, you know, how do I utilize a Raspberry Pi or Arduino? So when we get excited about that, but those barriers are, you know, just finding programs such as WeCode. There's very few of us out there, and we have to utilize and have more of these programs. There are others, but I think that's the biggest barrier, that there's so few of us.
Right.
So, yep.
So Derek, you had 8 teams at one point that you were managing at the elementary school. And Center is a fairly diverse district, correct? Like in terms of race and color. But we also know that sometimes these programs exist at schools with a lot of kids of color, and still they're not the ones that are participating in some of those STEM activities, right? They're often not guided to those programs. So I'm curious to know, how were you intentional about making sure that kids of color showed up for your program, and what kept them coming back?
Well, my school in particular, we have 4 elementary schools in our district. Who are always labeled as the stepchild of the district. All of the kids are, we're probably 99% African American. So it was easy to have my kids, I call them my kids, my students to come and participate, because I just started telling my first group, I started off with the first year with just about 10, 12 kids. And the following year, I went to a 3rd grade group because all of those 5th graders were leaving. And so I was had to start all back over again. And so I said, no, I need to think a little smarter and try to, you know, work with some 3rd graders so I at least have them for a couple of years. And so I had a teacher I taught the teacher into coaching that team while I coached big kids. And so it didn't go too well with the teacher because she kind of waited till the last minute to do some things. And so it just didn't work out well. So my principal was like, why don't we just stick to one team? There was just something inside of me was saying, I just can't do that, you know? And so I kind of, the following year, went again with 2 teams. And I had just finished paying for my second team, and I stepped outside my classroom to the water fountain, and I saw a little girl in 3rd grade who was crying. And I said, "Baby girl, why are you crying?" And she said, I really wanted to do robotics. I said, "You really did?" She says, "But my teacher said she could only choose 2 kids out of the classroom." I said, "Well, that is correct." Because at that time it was the junior team, so you could only have 6 kids on the team. And so I said, "Well, let me see what I can do." I stepped back into the classroom, pulled out my credit card, and paid for another team. And that's how I ended up with 3 teams that year. And then Chrissy found me a grant. And so it just, every year, I just kept pulling more teams and pulling more kids in. And so by the time, and as I pulled in the teams, I also pulled in teachers saying, "Look, this is what our kids need." I said, we work with a group of kids whose life expectancy is short. We hear the shooting, we know the drugs and stuff are in the neighborhood. I said, we need to give them another avenue. I said, and this is the avenue. And so I was convincing other teachers to help me coach teams. If they would just, I would be the assistant coach on those teams, if they would just manage them for that day. And so some days I would have 4 teams, some days I would have 3 teams. And so I was just going upstairs, downstairs of our building. And it was just, I had to do it because I saw it as the only way out for our kids, the kids that I deal with every single day. It was their, and I say that because, I had an all boys team and I had an all girls team on the upper level, 5th grade. And every year I had to struggle with when basketball season started, because it was the same time that robotics season started. And so boys, I would lose half of my boys, but I never quit. I would tell them, I said, "Look, you can't dribble forever. Some of you are not going to make it. Let's just be honest with you. Some of you are not as great as you think you are. And I know your mama wants you to become a star so you could buy her house." I said, "But you know what? That's not going to happen for everybody. That's just not going to happen for
with STEM money too."
And so I had to start convincing my parents that this robotics was something great. And so around that fifth year, my parents started saying, "You know what? I think there may be something to this." And so when that happened, it just kind of snowballed after that. Every year they were getting more parents. If I was like, "Look, your kids probably need to be in robotics. Your kids need to be in robotics. Your kids need to be in robotics." And that's kind of how it just went. And yes, 18 was a lot. For you. Yeah. And and I have to admit, 18s was really a lot. There was a lot of nights that most of the times I didn't get home till after 7 o'clock. And that's after being a teacher all day as well, because all this is after school.
Right. Yeah, that's that commitment though, from leadership, from, trusted adults. Brandon, can I ask you, you had mentioned a little bit about some folks who don't get involved in robotics, right? And you were kind of sharing with me a little bit about why you thought they didn't. And I'm wondering if you could share with us, like, how would you encourage someone your age or younger to think about getting involved in robotics if it wasn't something that was, in their mind to do?
Well, I'd probably ask them like what they wanted to do when they grew up and see how that would connect to robotics or STEM related stuff. Because Mr. Pruitt was right. There are a lot of even parents that are telling their children that the only way out is through entertainment or sports. But a lot of these kids do find other things that they like in STEM. And so you just really just have to kind of throw some things out there until they find something that they like.
Okay. Anybody have a comment about that? I think that's an interesting point. And it also, in our last week, there was the point brought up about, STEM for economic freedom, or STEM as, fulfilling your aspiration, right? Like, how do you marry those two things? And I think your point, Brandon, is, if you can really get personal with students and figure out what they're interested in, you could probably connect them to something in STEM. Does anybody else have a comment?
Yeah, I was going to say, if we could use halftime for like basketball games, football games, to show how a robot could throw a ball into a basketball goal, or use something within the robotics team or our STEM toolbox. You have to, it goes back to exposure. If the
Yep.
kids don't know it's something that they can do or something that they can see in the future, then they're not going to know it's there. It's kind of like, I want to be a doctor, but there are hundreds of jobs within the medical field. If I don't know about it, and until I meet an aunt and uncle or somebody else that I know who does it, I don't know it exists. And so I think we need to stop in the middle of some of these sports games and highlight what we are talking about, so the exposure can be there for parents and for kids.
And I'll piggyback off of that, Kenise, is regards to exposure, because so many of our students don't see people that look like them in this field. They may not see a Tammy that's a software developer, or they may not see a Brandon, that's doing robotics that look like them. So it seems when they can see people that look like them, their mom, their dad, they realize, wow, I really can be a game developer. I really can be a software engineer. And then also to not only expose those positions, but also other career paths, because you just don't, it's not just being a software developer, but there's so many other tech careers in technology. And we try our best to expose them to project management, business analysts, data analysts, so that they can see they're not just, it's not just required to be a software developer, but there's also graphic design and, all those other careers. So once they see that and get that exposure, I think that also helps bring out the idea of, yes, I would love to be in technology.
Yeah, and Brandon said he was the driver. Like,
Right.
like, what does that mean? What does that mean to be the driver? And what does that mean to be in leadership as the driver? And so I think just really, and then maybe a competition. I don't know. I could see a lot of things with exposing kids at pep assemblies, or even in elementary, bringing the whole team, Derek's team, and doing, a tour of other schools and other school districts. But you're right, Tammy, exposure.
And so I'm curious, because both of you also mentioned, or Kenise and Derek definitely mentioned, this idea of leadership and financial support, right? So I know, Kenise, you said money shouldn't be a limitation, right? There are a lot of things that you can do around STEM. And then there's also very real costs if you are doing robotics and you're part of like FIRST Robotics, those costs are real. And I'm curious if either one of you can talk about how did you get leadership that has those financial purse strings to release some for you, or are you still in that battle? It's an ongoing battle.
It's definitely an ongoing battle. I don't want to bring a bad light, but I want to be truthful in everything that I say. My third year of coaching, my first grade team was chosen to go to the big dance, to go to St. Louis, to the Worlds. And it was going to cost us, it was $300 just for the registration, which we didn't have. But my principal so graciously paid for it through the school funds. But then it was like, how do we get from Kansas City to St. Louis?
Right.
And so one of our partners, which was a church, they took up a collection for the kids to go to spend the 4 days down there. They paid for the hotel. They paid for all their food. I mean, all of that. I mean, the community came in and did their thing. The disappointing thing for me was my district didn't. And I tell them this all the time. I'm disappointed because had it been one of the other 3 schools in our district, and not the, and I'm just being real, not the predominantly Black school, I don't think we would have had that wouldn't have been an issue. And so now, even now that I'm here at the middle school, my thing is now trying to, because I see that there's a big push for drones to be in the future. So now I put together a package, and I put together a grant so that we could bring teaching kids how to fly drones into the process, because after I started looking it up, realizing I say, look, even if you don't fly the drone, if you work on drones in the future, that's at least $60,000 a year. If a kid who wants to be an auto mechanic, but what, you can work on these drones and make that good kind of money. So yes, the battle is going to constantly be there until we see the value in STEM, just like we see the value in football and basketball and baseball in each district. I know those things bring in money, but we're trying to make the world a better place. And we keep talking about we want to make the world a better place. Let's make it equal for everybody. Let's make it better for everybody, not just certain groups.
Yes, and I'll have to piggyback on Derek. It's a systemic issue, and I'm not here to throw my district under the bus either. But the squeaky wheel gets the whatever that analogy is, and so I've been battling bringing STEM related things to the district. I started a program to bring virtual reality to the district, and you would have thought I asked people to sever their arms. And so it's just a challenge because we don't know what we don't know.
Yes.
And we are afraid to step into this new world. And I'd have to agree with Derek. If we were a school with all gifted children, or it was lighter shades here, it would be no problem to bring in all of those type of things. But there's so many hoop jumps. Why are you doing it? What's the data say? Why do I need to tell you data about science, technology, engineering, and math? It speaks for itself.
Absolutely.
And so you can't go wrong introducing any of those types of career paths to a student. What we go wrong is buying programs and resources that we have not vetted that doesn't work. And so I'm very passionate about this. I've been passionate about it for years. And I just believe that I'm on a island by myself until other people start to say, hey, Kenise, I hear you're doing this. Can I know about it? And then, we go from there. So it's just a lot. I think I've always put the money in my budget. And when I put it in my budget, they can't tell me no, usually.
Right.
And so it's there, it's in black and white. And I get a lot of questions, why do you do this? And then I can find research because it's everywhere.
Right.
I can just look around you. It's science, technology, it's around you. So I don't really have any pushback in that. I just think we have to make it something that is more common. And then if you want to get to, sports and the challenges, we should start, and we never want to do this, but, concussions and all the negative things that come with sports related things, who's going to be the people to help those kids? It's these kids.
Right.
This work. And so,
and how do we find ways to support both of those things in the kid? If a kid is interested in sports and in science, is there a way to help them merge those, right? And how do we as adults help them create those pathways?
Absolutely.
Amy, were you going to add something? Tammy, can you hear me? Were you going to add something?
No, I was just definitely agreeing with everything, Kenise said. And like you're saying, how do we merge the two? You have these kids that may be in sports as well as wanting to get a little bit more about technology. And I'm thankful for the position that we are in, that we are a community-based program and we are able to go in different schools. Right now, we are working with students in the De La Salle Educational Center, which has been amazing to be able to provide coding for those kids. So that, because again, a lot of, as Kenise said, a lot of leadership don't know how to introduce STEM and how to introduce technology in their educational space. So I'm being able to have that community-based program, and we can go in different schools, and maybe at some point we'll be able to, have something in each school to assist with that educational part and, working with the leadership and showing them how to introduce STEM into their curriculum at some point.
Yeah, and a lot of what you guys have said, I feel like it echoes. Grant mentioned last week this notion that of the lack of expectations, which also you talked about, Derek, right? For like there was a sense of trying to build a program and being told that these particular kids are not interested in STEM. And so we're making decisions about what they're interested in or capable of. So thank you for bringing those points back up. We only have a couple minutes left. I'd love to hear from each of you, maybe one thing in this conversation about closing the racial equity gap that you feel like needs to be done or added or addressed by those in power in order to help to level the playing field. If anybody has anything to start, otherwise I'll go ahead, Brandon. That's great. Go ahead.
So Tammy said something earlier, like she saw like it's important for people of minority to see people like themselves doing these activities, and I want to kind of add on to that, and I say that it's extremely important that they see people like themselves in leadership positions and positions where like if someone comes to them to talk about STEM, it's someone like them. I think that would actually really help these kids connect to STEM related activities like that.
Fantastic, thank you. Anyone else?
I'll follow Brandon. I would just end by saying that back to where I started, STEM can equal the playing field. In the urban core, we're always trying to figure out how do we match up to the suburban schools? How do we compete? When Brandon graduates from Center, he's going to compete with all schools, not just kids in Center District. And I believe if you put in high-tech technology, you infuse forward-thinking learning in all schools, in urban schools, then that would help. It can, I can't say it will, but it can level the playing field so that Brandon and kids like Brandon can have exposure to what the kids in other districts already have at their fingertips.
Fantastic, thank you. Tammy or Derek?
Tammy, you want to? I'm gonna go back to what I talked about in the beginning. It's making sure that our parents know the value of STEM. You know, once we can get our parents to buy into it, they can get their kids to buy into it. I mean, I've seen that it can work, but we just need to get our parents to say, look, yes, my baby will not be able to dribble basketball or throw a football for a touchdown, but my baby can be this. They can be great at this. They can be great at that. And that within itself will help out our communities. It will help out our neighborhoods because, you know, communities that thrive and can give, pay their taxes fairly, those schools benefit from that. And when you're in a school system where everyone around there do not pay their fair taxes, then your baby's going to miss out on something. So it's important for our parents to see the value of STEM.
Fantastic. Thank you, Derek. Tammy?
Thank you for all of that. Yes, definitely, Derek, getting our parents, but just the exposure. I cannot stress that enough, not only to our, especially to our urban students, that they rarely see people that look like them. I just have to keep going back to that because they just don't see enough of us. So as many teachers, leaders, community individuals that are involved with STEM technology show up, mentor, help mentor. Mentorship is so very important, and we don't show up enough for our students. So mentor, find a program that you can get involved with, help out. If you are, you know, whatever it is, if you just know how to help turn on computers, be a mentor. Just be there and step up for our children because we need you desperately.
Thank you so much, guys. This is a wonderful conversation. It could go on much longer, but what we're going to do now is actually allow our participants, folks who are on the call, to ask you questions directly. So Christina's going to come on and she's going to throw you all some questions we're getting from our audience. I'll see you soon.
All right, thank you, Andrea. Okay, so I'm going to start with a question for Brandon. Brandon, what do you feel young people need from adults in order to better support their interests or STEM opportunities?
I would probably say proper exposure to these things and proper knowledge of them, because like Denise said, a lot of times they don't know about them and they're not being exposed to them enough. So how are you gonna find a job if you don't even know it exists? And it's not the proper thing that's being told to these children. So I think just exposing them to it would help a lot.
Very good. Thank you for that. I'm hearing this word exposure over and over again. Thank you, Brandon, for that. This next question I'm going to give to Derek. And Derek, you touched on this a little bit, but if you could expand on it just a little more. Why do predominantly Black schools face these additional obstacles when it comes to STEM learning, STEM engagement, STEM implementation?
Well, first and foremost, when we look at teachers, not every teacher, and it's just by how we were taught. When it comes to STEM, there's not always a right or wrong answer. Sometimes as teachers, we're always looking for the kids to give us the right answer. And then if it's not what we want them to have, then we kind of shun them. And so we don't allow kids to fail forward. And because you learn a lot from failing when it comes to STEM. I mean, all the STEM activities that we do, it's not always about the answer. It's about you working as a team. It's about you listening to this other person and all these other skills that you're learning that's going to benefit you in life. When it comes to Black schools, it's just that not everybody that's there is there for the students. Sometimes we have teachers who feel that they are doing community service and they want to give back, and that's the way they give back to our kids. But to be honest with you, I'd rather you go somewhere and teach where you really want to teach. Don't use our kids as a practice field for you to get good at what you want to do, and then you go off somewhere else and you take what you have practiced on our kids and you do well with someone else. We need people who wants to come into the community and come into our schools and teach our kids, because we want to see them grow up and become somebody in life. That's what we want to want. It's not us trying to be better than anybody else. We just want a fair shot at what everybody else has.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Derek. I appreciate it. I have a question here for Kenise. How can we help the adults get over their fear of STEM?
Yeah, I think it's a follow-up to what Derek just said. It's belief systems. A lot of our teachers have control issues, and STEM is not a controlling pedagogy. STEM is not a controlling resource. STEM allows kids to freely think and to freely move, exactly what Derek has said, but that's not what our educational system has taught them of how education looks. So it's a systemic, Christina, it goes way back into the teaching education programs. And I can talk about this because I teach diversity and inclusion at KU. And they have one course that talks nothing about how to teach kids of color. And so if they don't teach them how to teach kids of color, then they never know. And then we are here with them, we hire them, and then it takes us 3 to 5 years to teach them how to teach kids of color. And then only if they want to learn. And so it's a belief system, and it's intentional, and your leader has to be risky and open and honest and be ready to hear fallback from teachers and parents and district leaders. But you have to come with the mindset that the leader has to come with the mindset that they don't take no for an answer from their teachers. And that even in summer school, you have to pitch me your idea of the STEM idea you're going to do. And I have to vet it first to see if it's even something that I want to expose to the kids. And so you got to be in it all the way as a leader, and then let your teachers know that you're in it all the way, and your expectation is to hold them at the highest level of accountability, and then it moves forward from there. So it's tough work, Christina, but if the leaders are willing to do that, then it can be great work.
I love that. And I love that you said that leadership mindset means that you do not take no for an answer. I love that thought. So my next question is for Tammy. What are the students that you work with? What are they interested in? What brings them to you?
Wow, thank you for that question. What brings them to me is getting excited or learning about how to be creative and utilizing their mindset, and basically just working with a computer, getting on that computer and actually can see something that they actually coded, and then they see this creative collateral that they just, being a part of, especially our high school students. They're building websites, and they're not building websites just for themselves. They're building websites for our business partners. So when they see that these websites are being promoted in the public and they had something to do with that website, that's what drives them to WeCode, that they can be a part of projects that are being exposed.
Awesome. Thank you, Tammy. And I have one more question. I'm going to give this one to Brandon. And Brandon, wrap this up pretty quick in just a few words. What are the best ways to reach students regarding a STEM program? How do we get information to them?
I'd say either having an event that's held at the school specifically for it and having someone come up to talk to them, or something online like what we're doing now. Like you could just like join a room like this, and then there'd be a speaker speaking on STEM related jobs and activities. So something, we have to like give them something so that they can learn. Like,
Awesome. Very good. Thank you for
Can
that, Brandon.
I jump in on that one?
Yeah, go
Can I
ahead.
jump in on that as well?
Please do.
I've been
Yes.
working with students. I've been working with students on an after school, and I asked them that exact same question. How do we get other students? And what they responded with is getting into things that they know that kids are already part of, such as TikTok. Showing things about STEM and technology on TikTok and some of these other online social media platforms that our students are on. So something like that, TikTok, IG, Instagram, and just showing them the importance and how much fun they can have. But thank you, Brandon. That was great for the input.
And Christina, one last thing. It takes somebody of importance. Like, yes, I can talk to people, but they're going to listen to a Chiefs player way before they listen to me. And so if we can get somebody, and Derek, you are a rock star in your own right. So you go on, but sometimes it takes the next layer. And for people in our area who have clout to make this thing happen. So we really do need someone who can lead the charge, but who is actually really passionate about it and did something with it even in their youth or doing it now. Just not a pretty face, but somebody who's actually in the work.
That's right.
Got it. I love that. Someone with clout to lead the charge. I love it. Well, that's the question we have now during our regular session. That's the time we have now for questions during our regular session. So I'm going to hand this back off to Andrea to wrap it up for us.
Yes, and so I just want to say thank you. I feel like a lot of the major takeaways that I heard was really how do we really get parents and teachers excited about this process so that they can be excited with our kids, but also this reminder that this is a systemic issue. Like, we're not getting financial support specifically for programs that support kids of color. And so those are much larger conversations that we need to talk about. How do we move that needle? And I love that Kenise brought up the example of, maybe at some of those halftime shows or sports shows, we bring out those robotics and we show how fantastic and cool those can be along with the sports. So I just want to thank all of you for coming, Tammy, Brandon, Kenise, and Derek, and engaging in this conversation with us. it was wonderful. I mean, I walked away with some things I learned, and I feel like probably those who have registered have as well. And it will help us as we springboard to the next conversation next week, which will be focused on the middle school experience. And so we'll just try to see how we can build from there. I will just let everybody know too that at the end of this, probably today or tomorrow, you will all receive a survey about what happened here today. If you would fill that out, we would greatly appreciate it. It helps us grow and be able to add some nuance to what we're doing here. And all of the panelists, if you're willing to stay for another just 10 minutes, we will get to any questions that weren't able to be answered during that allotted time. But thank you so much for your time. It was a wonderful conversation. And thank you for all who came and participated. Hopefully we'll see you all again next week. Have a great day.
Okay, I'm going to jump right into the questions just to be respectful of everyone's time. I'm going to jump into asking some of the questions for this extended session. This one is for Derek. This is from someone who actually runs a STEM organization, and she says that she has worked to give money to host STEM programs each year. Why do you think the district turns away or turns down these programs or this money from these programs? And how do we get the schools and the parents to take advantage?
That's a great question.
It's a loaded question.
I'm not really sure why the district turns money down, because now if you want to give it to me directly, I don't turn it down. But you know, it goes back to what I said, that it's not always what the district wants. You know, it's not at the highlight of what they want at that particular time, because they don't see the value in STEM related jobs. I mean, that's the only way that I can see it. What was the second part of that? Yes.
And how do you think we can get parents and teachers to be, parents and school districts to be more receptive of these opportunities?
That is $1 million question. Again, for me, what I tried to do is turn the kids into rock stars. You know, I try to treat them as if they were athletes. You know, I buy the T-shirts, I give them backpacks. I make them, when they walk through the school, you know, other kids see them. I want the other kids to say, "Hey, I want that T-shirt. I want a backpack like they have." Well, you know, you got to be a part of the robotics team. You know, and that's how I just get more and more on there. And it's the same with the parents, you know, because we know as parents, you know, we don't want a kid to have something more than our kid to have. And so I just try to dress it up so that our kids look good when they come out into the hallways and stuff. I just make sure that our kids are represented from that aspect. Again, just like if they're an athlete, I make sure they look just like the athlete.
Very good. I love that. Kanice, this one's for you. How do you stay updated? You introduced some really good STEM resources. How do you stay updated with the latest? Huh?
She had to jump off.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Jump off.
Okay, no worries. No worries there. Let's see. I have another question. I'm going to give this one to Brandon. When you joined the robotics team back in 3rd grade and going along, were there students of color on your team when you joined? And then maybe you can speak a little bit about how that has helped guide your journey participating on robotics teams with other students that possibly look like you. So let's take that first part. Were there students of color on your team when you joined?
Yes.
Okay. And how? Go ahead.
So I've pretty much always been on a team with students of color.
Okay. Has that helped you stick with robotics and STEM for the amount of time that you have?
Definitely. So always being with a team of people that look like me has helped a lot, especially because most of the other that are at competitions don't look like me. So having my team be diverse has helped a lot.
Very good. Thank you for that. I'm going to take this one. This one's for Tammy. Tammy, how did you get started in creating your after school program, and what was your inspiration?
Wow, how did I get started? I was doing some pop-up classes in session in communities such as Ivanhoe, because me being a Black woman in tech, and this is also a part of my inspiration, me being a Black woman in tech, I didn't see people that looked like me. I didn't have a mentor. I was doing software development, solo, and then I started working at a pretty popular digital marketing firm. I didn't see very many people. Normally, I was the only person of color, let alone a woman, in meetings and running tech teams. And at that point, I'm like, why is that? Why do we not see so many other Black women in technology? And I didn't want our kids to grow up like that. I didn't want our kids growing up missing out on such a lucrative career path. And I, just like, I think it was Derek that said, these kids get to hear about how much money professionals and football players make. And I'm not ashamed to tell these kids how much money I make. I'm thankful of being in this career path. It's lucrative. And I tell them all the time, this is how much money you can make. And I've been in this career and I will never get out of technology because it's been a blessing for me. And I definitely encourage it. So that's my inspiration and my, the reason why I got involved.
I read an article about that. We've been taught to think that sharing how much money we make is taboo. We shouldn't do that. But now we kind of got to put our money where our mouth is with these kids and know that this is lucrative.
Yep.
Andrea, I have a question for you.
Okay.
How do we turn gatekeepers into allies, partners, and champions?
Oh, wow. Now that's a powerful question, isn't it? I mean, she left that for me, y'all.
That's why they directed it to you.
The gatekeepers. Well,
just for you.
Here's the thing. I really feel like all of the youth development work is built on relationship building, right? It's like, first and foremost, you have to see these young people as young people that, like any other, like specifically we're talking about race, right? So if you're working in a place where you're a gatekeeper, where you're like, I see people of color as not being interested in STEM, I need you to stop looking at them as differently than you would look at any other young person that you might be dealing with, right? And so, and engage them on that individual relationship level. Because I feel like once we make it personal, once we really make it personal, like this kid is important to me, that, and it's all of them are important to me, then I see them as individuals, then I am less likely to try to continue to put barriers around them, as opposed to if I'm looking at them as a group of kids who I expect to behave a certain way, right? So, and some of that is the time we're living in now, where everybody is coming to a reckoning, where you got to figure out where you're going to stand on these lines as it relates to race in general, right? So that would be, the start for me, is getting people to think about these kids as individuals that are having individual experiences, and how do you help them tap into their highest potential as that person, not as some collective idea you have of kids of color. But I popped on because I wanted to just add, and when I talked to Brandon, because I thought this was really interesting, he had shared with me, if you don't mind me saying, Brandon, about, I had asked like if a young person could get involved in STEM at any point, and he, at any age, and he was saying, yes, absolutely they can, but he felt like if they got in, the earlier they got in, the more likely they were to stay in that path, or, even if they changed careers in STEM, their interest in STEM would stay longer. So I thought that was just an interesting point, something for us to consider as we think about elementary age students.
And the earlier is not too early. I mean, I have 7-year-olds that are coding. I mean, And at one point when we were in person, you know, we even had a 5-year-old because the parent had to bring them because their 12-year-old was there, but just started introducing them to the Legos, started introducing them to, you know, object-oriented paths so that they can learn. But yeah, the earlier, the better. And, you know, you think about even in other countries, these kids, that's a requirement. Coding is a requirement in kindergarten. So when they start learning to read, they start learning how to code. US doesn't do that. It's not a requirement.
And just to piggyback off of you, Tammy, you're absolutely right. We have Pee-wee leagues where kids are 3 and 4 playing soccer, then they can be coding as well. So, you know, there are no excuses. You know, I know people like to try to come up with, well, you know, sometimes it's too young. No, it's not too young. It's not too young to be putting a little helmet on out there playing football or putting flags on. It's not too early for them to be in STEM.
Nope.
It changes what we have to do as adults in order to prepare for
Absolutely.
that, right?
Absolutely.
It's not too hard for them.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that.
Well, we are right here at 12:40, which is time for us to informally adjourn our our extended discussion. But I would just like to thank you all. This was such an excellent conversation. I've loved every thought that has come from this conversation. Thank you to all of our attendees for being here, and keep in mind, we continue as we begin to discuss our middle school years in our webinar next week from 11:30 to 12:30. So I appreciate you all being here. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Andrea, for moderating this series. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you.